English, but I might break down into Russian if it gets really stressful.
The recording has started.
Uh, well, hey all. Welcome to this demo, this Chapel demo. Today, I'll be showing off some of the large language model experiments that I've been working on with Chapel. In particular, I've been trying to make it a little better to write to get large language models like Claude here to write Chapel code. And if you're wondering why I'm looking at Claude and maybe not ChatGPT or Copilot or something else, the answer is will become evident shortly, but it has to do with how easy it was to set up with the tools that I've been developing, though those tools should work for other platforms as well. So uh, Chapel is kind of an up and coming language, and it seeks to advance the state of the art in parallel programming. And as a result, almost by definition, Chapel has fewer developers and fewer code examples on the internet for large language models to train with. And as a result, at times, large language models like Claude here, uh, they can produce code that looks like valid Chapel, but maybe isn't, or maybe that was valid Chapel when it was rapidly evolving in the past, but isn't anymore. And one of my goals recently has been to try to supplement the output of these large language models with tools that help them, get it right. And so that's what I'll be starting off with today. So this is a desktop version of Claude, and the desktop version of Claude enables something called the Model Context Protocol, which in this case, my typo is still there, uh, enabled me to add a Chapel support Model Context Protocol server. And this, in turn, has enabled what will enable Claude to do a variety of tasks that are Chapel specific, such as access documentation using list primers and get primers, compile programs, and perform linting tasks, which should make it easier for it to get code right. Now, I've opted for a live demo here instead of just scrolling through chat output from existing, language model executions in hopes that it would be more interesting to watch, but perhaps it will be less interesting if it breaks live because I will not be able to predict the ways in which it breaks since large language models are probabilistic. So we're gonna embark on this journey of writing a Conway's Game of Life a parallel program together and work through any large language model weirdness if and when it shows up. All right, so here I have a pre-written prompt because I didn't want to subject you to watching me type for 30 seconds. In this case, I'm asking for a parallel Conway's Game of Life implementation. I am being explicit to let Claude know to use the tools that I've just shown off in this Chapel support list. And the last thing is I'm using the free Claude tier, so my conversation limits are quite short. So I asked it to not request too many primers. So primers, they're called primers, uh, because uh, because they'll overflow the conversation limits on my free tier. All right, and then I'm just going to hit send and we're going to watch it work. Uh, I mean, you might be sick of watching large language models type tokens nowadays, but what's interesting here is that in addition to just typing tokens, this Claude instance is actually interacting a little bit with the Chapel compiler and documentation. So first, it asked, "Hey, what are all the primers that are available to me?" And so we have random numbers, records, interop with C. Those are all the available documentation pages. And so using that, it looked up, "Hey, for all loops seems like a relevant documentation page," and then it fetched the for all loops documentation. We don't have to look through it. This is like encoded in JSON, but it got it. And now, as I was talking, it was writing out this Conway's Game of Life. Here it is, doing stuff. Uh, and then now what it's doing is actually compiling this program, which normally you'd have to do this yourself. Um, Oh, look at that. It actually found a syntax error and it's fixing it. Uh, so, if you're interacting with Claude in this standard or conventional way of chatting with it in this interface, normally you'd have to paste the program in, run it yourself. It would not compile. You would give it back to Claude. Claude would be like, "Oh, I understand. Here's the problem." Now we've kind of cut out that iteration and just given it to Claude to do all these things. So it compiled the program. There were syntax errors. Maybe we can find them. Yeah, there was a syntax error on line 98. Um, and then it fixed it. I tried compiling again. Um, I guess that it didn't compile again. This is actually much worse than it normally does, but like I said, um, the large language models are probabilistic in nature, so sometimes you get better results than other times. Um, we'll just have to wait for it to compile. Uh, and then hopefully we'll get it right on the third try because I don't really feel like, oh yeah, look at that, it compiled. Um, so now what it's doing is actually invoking a chapel linter, chapel check, which comes with chapel normally when it's installed, to see if there's anything wrong with this program stylistically that it should fix. In the meantime, I'm actually just going to take this artifact and try to compile it. We're doing this together. I haven't pre-written this. I'm going to call it Conway test. The Teams window is in the way though. Um, okay. For some reason, all of these tools really like creating empty lines with spaces in them, but that's fine, I guess. So I'll try to compile Conway test. Hopefully, yeah, this is a problem of my system actually. I don't know what happened. I guess I updated my OS. But it has nothing to do with the program that Claude wrote here. And then we can write Conway test. And look at that. It printed a bunch of Conway's Game of Life output. Um, yeah, so it created, very boring patterns actually. A glider at the top, which is gradually making its way down. Um, a line that oscillates back and forth, and then the cube is like the smallest stable Conway's Game of Life thing. So maybe it's not as aesthetic. We could try, let's see, did it actually find any linting warnings? I guess not. Okay, great. And okay, I'm out of free messages. Like I said, the Claude free plan restrictions are pretty pretty tough. I think in the past, I've performed this same kind of demo. Maybe we can steal the code from there, because I want to show the animated thing that it can come up with, even if it wasn't produced by that model in particular. Uh, maybe if I was using a large language model and paying for it, this wouldn't be a problem. Um, oh. Claude test, Claude demo. My file names are uh, not consistent, which means I'm creating lots and lots of temp files. But I guess now I'll run Claude demo and hopefully that works. Yay, look at that. We're watching all this happen in real time. Once again, the patterns are kind of boring, but at least it works. I guess the glider turned into a box when it hit the edge. Right. So that was kind of the basic form of using this. And what this operates, what this is backed by is a thing called a well, here Chapel Apport. But in reality, Chapel Support. Maybe I can find it somewhere. I don't think I can. Um, let's see. Here it is, which is on GitHub. Um, uh, oh my gosh. Sorry, this part maybe I should have prepared a little better. Apparently I cannot write this git command on the fly. Look, uh, I'll just open a new browser window here. GitHub.com. Um, and then for now, the MCP server that I've been showing off is on my GitHub account, because it's experimental in nature. But you can access it yourself as well. And this is kind of scary. I hope that my demo is going okay, because the internet seems to be a little bit on the slow side today. Here we are. Okay. Right. So this is a public repo, and you can set it up yourself. In fact, in a moment, I'll go to my Claude settings and show you how I've configured it there. But it's basically just a Python program that you or anyone else can run. So you can clone this and set it up with your preferred large language model provider, which can include Visual Studio Code with Copilot, uh, Claude, as I just showed you, Claude Code, which we will look at in a little bit, uh, and um, there's one more, Zed, which is this editor that I've been playing with recently. Right, so I guess I'll include this link to the repo somewhere in the description of the video, or somewhere where it's publicly accessible. And I suspect eventually this code might show up in the Chapel repo proper, but for now, since it's experimental, it's not. Okay, and then having cloned this repo and installed the pip dependencies, all of which is kind of documented here in the installation section, uh, I configured Claude with it. You have to like edit a JSON file for some annoying reason with Claude, but wow, it won't even it opened it. Uh, one sec. It opened the JSON like it took me to the folder where the JSON file is, but uh, that's my Claude configuration, which includes it's really small. Um, that has a path to my Chapel support repo and is just configuring the Chapel support MCP server to run the UV package manager and eventually invoke that script. All right, so that's the basic integration of Claude with large language models. And like I said, the reason I'm using Claude here is because Claude has a much nicer, easier way to set up the model context protocol with it directly. Like, I just said it's a JSON file for some reason, but it was pretty easy to do. I'm not sure that ChatGPT supports MCP even in the desktop app, and for other things, it's a bit more involved. So that's why it was Claude. And now the next experiment is to do the same thing we just did, but with a tool called Claude Code, which is probably around somewhere here, I hope. Let's see. I think I made a folder called Claude Temp, which, um, so Claude Code is what's called an agent. And that means that it actually sits in your terminal and basically interacts with your system live. And it kind of can just do its own thing. Very similar to how the chat version of Claude was, compiling programs and doing stuff. But the terminal-based Claude can actually just, run the Chapel compile command and have it work. So I think it's just Claude. Yeah. And if I run /MCP here, it will tell me that the Chapel support MCP server is connected. And we can basically steal and reuse my prompt from the free version of Claude that, timed out. Where are you, Claude? Um, uh, in fact, I'm still going to ask it. I'm going to keep this prompt identical, and I'm going to ask it to avoid looking at more than one primer, because so this tool uses Claude API credits, which means it costs me cents for every certain amount of words that it uses. And that means the fewer words it uses, the better. That said, it works better in my experience than the chat-based version of Claude, so maybe the money is better spent there. Anyway, I'm going to hit enter. Yeah, and now we're seeing it basically do that same thing that the chat version of Claude was doing, because it listed all the primers. Here they are. It's actually nicer formatted than the chat version of Claude. It read the for all loops primer, and then it's actually using the compile Chapel program tool, even though technically speaking it doesn't even need to do that. Um, and it's getting those same linker warnings that I was getting earlier. Um, Wow, there's a lot of flickering going on, so I'm sorry about that. It's on my end as well. I'm going to interrupt it now and tell it to just compile the program. Right here. You can just compile the program using Chapel in the terminal. Um, hopefully that gets it to do stuff. Um, so yeah, here it wrote the file, gameoflife.chapel. Um, and then it wants me to, yeah, so this one, because it interacts with the file system, you actually have to allow it to do things. In this case, it's trying to create a new file. I have to say, yes, that's fine. Please go ahead. Um, it wrote that file, and now it's actually running the Chapel compiler. Again, it gets that linker warning. I really need to get on that. And then it's running the game of life. Uh, I'm not sure if we'll see the output. Well, yeah, there was some output apparently. It's just that the Claude, I have to press Control R to expand it. Um, yeah, there it is. Once again, we have a working Conway's Game of Life. And in fact, I think what I'm gonna do is close this. Nope. What is it? Just quit slash exit. Yes. And run that Claude program myself. Conway game wash. Oh, it's dot game of life. That's it. And then it printed it. Since we didn't ask it to be nicely animated, it's once again just printing these frames. Um, but um, there it is. And I really, that's all I wanted to show off here. Um, yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything that I wanted to demonstrate. Or except maybe one other thing that I want to mention, I don't think I really want to go through the process of showing it, was that I used Claude Code, this thing that we've been talking to last in the terminal, to write a feature for a Chapel project called Arcuda. And Arcuda is a pretty large code base that um, has a lot of code and it kind of patterns very specific to itself. And it took Claude some time, but it could get code that pretty much worked, as once it handed it back to me. And so I think there's the promising direction here to integrate these things with developing even large Chapel programs and not just, the same uh, game of life examples that most people have at one point tried to write. And certainly Conway's Game of Life occurs in the data set a lot. And now that's all I wanted to say. So I don't know if there's any questions, and if not, maybe we can pause the recording.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
How much work would you say was it that if you have a working Chapel installation to hook it up to the online version of Claude, to make it work with the MCP protocol or MCP?
The web version doesn't support it because it runs the Python commands like let's see, can we go back to yeah, here it is. So here, you can, oh, I'm leaking sensitive information. This is a path on my system. It's running a Python script that's installed on my end. So the web version of Claude can access it, which is why I had to install the desktop app. But the desktop app, uh, the configuration, I mean, like if you know the proper JSON format, which is what we were just looking at, it's 3 button clicks to get to it, and then one shortcut to paste. Maybe, edit the path, but in general, pretty easy. And all the tools that use MCP, they have different different JSON formats for some reason. Like none of them will have this exact structure for even between like Claude tools, but it's all variations on a theme. So you just have to like look it up. Typically they'll have an example thing and then you just put like slightly massage this command, UV directory, whatever, to match the structure of your particular client, and then it will be fine. So not much effort, except that the web version actually doesn't support this kind of thing.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And did you say it was like more difficult with, say, Copilot because the
Uh,
process was weird?
so I hesitate to just like open my VS Code window, but I think that it was about the same, except I had to know to like search for a certain setting in the settings. I think I had to like search for MCP, MCP in like the VS Code settings UI, and then it came up, and then it opened the JSON file. So you still have to edit the JSON file. Um, I think what
All
I
right.
had more trouble with was uh, the tool use feature of Copilot integrated in VS Code is still kind of rough. So it was having some trouble at times. So more than it was a little buggy for me than the setup was difficult.
Great. Thanks. Great demo.
Thanks. Any other questions?
No bearing questions, I will stop the recording.
Awesome. Thanks.